Hi guys, this is Brandon Hanson, and today I'm going to be talking about what I learned through Intro to Business. So just kind of going through the components of what we did in Intro to Business. We started kind of with our biblical perspectives in business, and what I took away from this was kind of uh, showing God's love through the way we act in business, and that's really what I took from that, but I'll talk about that kind of later. We talk about God's intention in our response. That also leads into that idea of treating people with kindness and respect. Leadership, to rule or to serve. This was more talking about servant leadership and how we can best exemplify what God wanted us to do as leaders in our communities. Then we talked about business and how it can be an agent of shalom or peace, and how being a peaceful businessman can really help the business world. And then we kind of broke down the areas of business: management, accounting, marketing, finance, economics, and public administration. So, before I kind of talk about what I learned from this class, I just wanted to briefly discuss the influences on my life that have kind of helped shape who I am. Coming to door, one big one obviously is God. God has made me the man I am, has given me my life circumstances that essentially are what dictate my decisions and everything I'm going to be now and in my future. We then lead into my family. My family obviously has a big influence on me, and has a large influence on what I want to do for my future. That leads directly into my dad's career. He's a salesman, which I will also discuss later, but that is a possible career path for me. And then athletics. I feel like athletics is huge on teaching how to interact in a team, which is a huge part of being in the business world, is learning how to work with other people and establish connections. And I just think athletics has a bigger influence on my life that may not be as prominent as these other two, but is still just as important. So, to talk about my takeaways, the first is just be genuine. I think that this is really lacking in the business world, which is kind of sad because we are all just in need of kindness and unity, and especially in the United States right now, everybody's trying to separate, and that's not what God wants. So just be a genuine person, be nice, be kind. It's not that hard, but it can really set you apart in the business world. Then we go into serving both customers and coworkers. So this idea is a huge takeaway, because if you're not able to serve one of these two groups, you're going to really struggle to be successful in a business career. And then 3 is finding your passion and defining your calling. This define your calling piece kind of comes from Core 100, which some of us took this year, or all of us have at least taken at some point in our dork career. And this just is trying to make sure you understand what your life purpose is, and the idea of finding your passion helps make sure that you're not bored in your career and that you're actually having fun. And when you're having fun in your job, it's not work, it's fun. So going into my first takeaway is just being genuine. As I kind of talked about, you just need to be nice, be a good person. We talked about this in my principles of marketing class this semester with Professor Zevenbergen, and he would just talk about how don't be shady. Be an honest businessman. It's not hard, and it sets you apart. For example, when he was talking about Pella Windows, they used to struggle with having an honest salesman in Chicago. He was always trying to go beyond the system and wasn't treating customers well. He did great in his sales career, but they ended up firing him because he wasn't a good person and he didn't fit the culture of the business. So I think finding and understanding the business's culture and fitting into that, and if good people aren't in that business, you should probably get out and find a different career that God will have set aside for you. And then this leads into being intentional with our faith. In as Christians, and this is what I really learned this year at Dort and in Intro to Business more particularly, we just see that you need to find a culture that grows your faith and you can grow with other Christians and enjoy business together. I think that's another thing that's lacking massive in the business world is my dad will talk about it all the time. We don't have these people with a faith background, and sometimes that can lead to struggles when we're talking about honesty and integrity. So just trying to be intentional and find a culture that fits your faith. And then finally, we just talk about be you. I'll go into this a little later, but I mean, it's huge. Just be yourself. We are all different and we can all really help the business world. My second takeaway is talking about serving. Serving comes in many different ways. So we first talk about serving customers. There's a saying in business that, you know what, the customer is always right, and that has to come first, and that's how we can be successful in business in general, is trying to think of how the customer is, or what the customer's thought process is, and how this can affect us is knowing how to sell or how to give our business to them. So then we kind of just have a cool little arrow there, cool transition, and we go into serving our coworkers. So this would tie directly into our Principles of Management class, where we would often have these case studies, and people would be total jerks to their coworkers, and it would turn into a situation that we would have to manage through. And situations are always going to arise, whatever path of business you take, but learning how to deal with this is another huge essential part, is learning to put our coworkers first as well and serving them so that we have a great team culture that can be as efficient as possible. And my final kind of talking point is being you. This is one thing that has also been very apparent at Dort, is everybody is different. And I grew up in a big town, and coming from a big town, there's a lot of pressures and a lot of just social rank that you're trying to always be a part of. And going to college, I learned that, you know what, I can just be myself. Everybody's different. I have a twin brother in this class, and you know what? We are very different people, and we can both serve the business community very well if we just be ourselves. I think that oftentimes in today's society, we're getting so caught up in what people think of us and what others are wanting us to do, and this just is frankly irrelevant. God made us on this earth to be ourselves, because all of us can contribute to society in different ways that are unique. I can't contribute the same as Blake can. I can't contribute the same as my dad can. But I can contribute in my own way, which is just huge when we talk about diversification. And diversification of the business world is everybody is different. So being ourselves, we can learn to try and pick up on others' differences and best be the best businessman or woman to them. So we kind of go into, what does this mean for me? For me specifically, I have kind of two routes that I've noticed and put into my emphasis for my business administration degree. And the first of those is finance. Finance has a lot to do with numbers, and I think this is more of a natural skill of mine. I've always been pretty good at math. And one thing I do and don't like about it is it's pretty routine. If you're a financial planner, for example, you're doing relatively the same thing every day. You're talking about how people can spend their money, which there is diversification in that, but it is kind of nice to get into a routine, and I do well with that. And then the biggest thing looking at the future is the finance world in general is growing a lot, because you can become a financial planner in both commercial and business side of things, or personal, like we kind of learned about in the talk in our class. And then the second is marketing. So I think this might be more of my route, and I'll talk about this in the next slide. But marketing, you have to make connections, and I like to think that I'm good at connecting with people, and I think that this could really help me grow as a person in my future. We then also talk about how marketing is applicable to any part of business and making or understanding how customers react and how we can best sell and um, give them our product or service is huge and very applicable, obviously, kind of as I said, in whatever business I do end up working in. And then the final thing that, once again, is kind of a pro and con, and I'll take some getting used to, is when we're in college and we're in high school, we're so used to routine, but marketing is a very fluid and constantly changing environment, which I think would be really good as my future extends and hopefully, or maybe in marketing. But talking about how marketing is constantly, you're always marketing to different people. The consumer is always changing. And it may be tough towards the beginning part of my career to try and kind of hop right in things and understand how to market to people because other people in the industry have been doing it for decades. But I think as my career would go on, I think this would become a little bit more understandable, and hopefully Dort can help prepare me for that. Now we kind of get into some specifics. So we kind of have two options for me as it comes to career. My comfortable option is probably going into sales, just like my dad. I have a lot of connections in sales in general and Western sales. My dad works for Ariat. It's a boot and apparel company, and I am sure I could get into the Western industry space through recommendations with my dad, and I'd have a lot of support there, which would be really awesome. But at the same time, I want to kind of make my own name for myself. So this kind of turns into more of the exploratory ideas where I don't exactly know what I was going to do or know what I want to do. But in our Principles of Marketing class, we had a guest speaker on the pork board, and I'm really interested in food, and I think that this could possibly be an exploratory option for me is the marketing of food and selling of food. I think this would just be kind of cool and at least a different industry that I can make my own name for myself, but it's still applicable. So I have mentors like my dad and my family that can at least somewhat relate to me in my career. And anyway, that is all I have. So thank you guys for listening, and I hope my understanding of what I learned in Intro to Business was helpful. Thanks.